If you had a heart attack and you were only able to work 2 hours per day, what would you do? If you had a gun to your head and you had to stop 4/5 of all of your time-consuming activities, what would you leave and what would you keep? If this is the only thing that I accomplished today, will I be satisfied with my day? So these are some of the questions that Tim Ferriss asks in his book, which is designed to basically reduce the amount of hours that we work so that we have the time to do the things that we're curious about, or that we're interested in. Whether that's jujitsu, whether that's quad biking through China, or whether that's learning a new language. I'll go over some key concepts from the entire book, and then we'll summarize each of the chapters. So there's a concept of the new rich, which basically is a group of people who don't want to wait until they're 65 years old to retire. They don't want to work a job that they hate for 35 plus years so that they can retire and enjoy their life when they're old. A deferrer is someone who wants to retire at 55 and chooses when they get to work and works when they want to work. The new rich have other people working for them. They have what are known as mini vacations, where they can do what they enjoy for sometimes months and explore their hobbies. Ferriss argues that people don't want to be millionaires. They want things that only millions can buy. He argues that complete freedom is to have time and mobility. To him, the ideal is that you're working remotely or you're not even working as many hours as you used to. A lot of this isn't attainable for the average person, but I go over the takeaways that can apply to everyone, regardless of whether they're a college student or they're starting a business. So a really important concept in this book is the Pareto Principle. The book is basically an embodiment of that principle applied into somebody's life. It's the 80-20 principle, in which 80% of your productivity comes from only 20% of your time. Think about how many breaks and distractions and messages and emails you get while you're trying to be productive. We only need 1/5 of the time that we use for 80% of our productivity. The other 20% of our productivity is taking up 80% of our time. Ferriss argues that by eliminating the 20% of productivity that's taking up 80% of our time, we can be a lot more efficient and effective. Chapter 5 goes into detail about how to do this and how to eliminate those distractions and those things that are taking up so much of our time. But before we get into that, we'll go over how the book is described. It's split up into 4 sections with the acronym DEAL. So DEAL basically stands for define your goals, meaning figure out what you really want, set those goals. E is for eliminate distractions, anything that's consuming your time and preventing you from being productive. He says limit social media consumption to an hour. Don't listen to the news. Don't read the news. Focus on the 20% that's important and not the 80% that's irrelevant. Learn to say no to people and to time-consuming activity. A is for automate. So automate your cash flow so that even when you're not working, you're basically making money. Outsource and hire a virtual assistant that can handle tasks that are time-consuming. Hire a virtual assistant on Fiverr, for example. Work to create a business that can function independently from you as much as possible. L is for liberate, so liberate yourself from standard expectations. Create a life of mobility where you're taking mini vacations in very affordable locations and countries with very favorable exchange rates. So chapter 1 describes differences between the deferrers and the new rich, and we've already covered a lot of that. Ferriss doesn't like the idea of a traditional retirement. He argues that if you can free your time and location, your money is automatically worth 3 to 10 times more. He says practically your money is worth more based on how many W's you can control. What you do, when you do it, who you do it with, where you do it. Chapter 2 challenges a lot of assumptions. If people tried the same thing to solve a problem and it's not working, then try something different, or maybe even the opposite. And Ferriss gives a practical example of this from his own life. In his first sales job, one of the things that was holding him back from getting meetings with clients were the gatekeepers or the secretaries. So he started making all of his calls between 8 o'clock and 8:30 and 6 o'clock and 6:30. And he achieved 2 times as many meetings than the people who worked from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. He goes over 10 ways to redefine life, and I'll go over a few of them. Interest and energy function in cycles. To succeed, you need to alternate between work and rest. It's basically like the Pomodoro technique enhanced and applied to your life. You're working and you're taking mini vacations so that you enjoy life and you keep your motivation. The timing is never right. So stop waiting for the right moment to start that blog or that YouTube channel or that project. When it comes to our goals, there are some practical things that we can start right now, but it's fear that's holding us back. Things in excess become their opposite. The point is not to create extra useless time, but the point is to create enough time so that you can do the things that you want to do rather than the things that you are obligated or you have to do. Relative income is more important than absolute income. Relative income measures money and time. So basically, a person working 10 hours and making $10,000 is more rich than somebody working 80 hours and making $100,000. Chapter 3 goes into understanding your fear so that it doesn't paralyze you. Ferriss has us look at the potential impact of our fears, the likelihood of it occurring, and how we would repair it if our fears were to come true. He prompts us to ask ourselves what we're losing because of fear. What are we avoiding because of fear? What are we losing financially because of fear? In chapter 4, Ferriss argues that there's more competition for average goals than there is for incredible things, since everybody thinks that incredible things are unattainable. So he suggests that we set slightly unrealistic goals so that we can actually achieve them and we can use our full potential. We find work to replace what we're already doing now. He suggests we create a 6-month and a 12-month timeline, and to write 5 things that we dream of doing, 5 things we dream of being, and 5 things we dream of having for each of those timelines. And he tells us to work to make them as specific as possible. And of those 15 things, he wants us to choose the 4 that are the most important. He asks us to research the cost of having those things, those 4 things, and write the steps for those 4 things for our 6-month timeline. Chapter 5 is about the Pareto Principle basically applied to our life. We have to ask ourselves what 20% of things are causing 80% of our problems. To apply this principle to everything, what 20% of things lead to 80% of our desired outcomes. For example, Ferriss found out that 5 of his clients were creating 95% of his revenue, his income, and 2 of those customers were problematic. So he tried to focus on those 5, right? So one of those 2 problematic clients basically took off and ran away. The other one shaped up. So then Ferriss spent the rest of his time trying to find customers like his top 3. And in 1 month, he doubled his income and he cut the number of hours he was working from 80 to 15. And another important concept is Parkinson's law. Basically, a task will grow and swell into the amount of time that you allow for it. Only do the 20% you need for the 80% of your productivity. Shorten the rest of the time that you have so you can focus on that 20%. In chapter 6, he suggests that we cut out useless information such as the news. If something's really important, you'll hear it from other people. To reset, reduce the amount of TV you watch to 1 hour, reduce the fiction reading to 1 hour, and cut out web surfing unless you need it for your job. And then finally, he offers tips like non-finishing. If you're watching a movie and you're not interested in it, then you don't have to finish it. Or if you're reading a book and you're not into it and you don't need it, then don't finish it. Don't take up unnecessary time doing something that's not benefiting you. Chapter 7, he talks about reducing interruptions, and he divides them into 3 categories. 1 is time wasters, things that you can ignore or reduce with little to no consequences. Number 2 is the time consumers. They're repetitive tasks that you have to do, but they interrupt high-level work. Number 3 is empowerment failures. When someone needs encouragement or approval to do small and unimportant tasks. He goes over a list of ways to reduce these. For example, training people to get to the point immediately and quicker. Don't have a meeting without having a clear objective. Chapter 8 is about outsourcing your life and building systems to replace yourself. And he goes over options to hire a virtual assistant from a low-cost geographic area, so someone from another country who's fluent in English. And he gives some options, some of which aren't as available. Brickwork or Fiverr is available. And he also suggests eliminating what is unnecessary before you delegate work. And he goes over guidelines on how to delegate. And then he goes over some objections, like people complain that it's costly to hire a virtual assistant. Ferriss says, if you could pay somebody $40 a week to have your Friday off, would you do it? Paying $40 for a virtual assistant to work 8 hours is practically the same thing as having your Fridays off. And of course, he goes over making this a reality, like protecting your personal information. If you have common sense and you don't do silly things, you can protect your personal information. Chapters 9 through 13 go into a lot of ways to generate automatic income. Find a muse, test it, design that business, filter customers, work your way to start working remotely, expand the time that you're working remotely, and then eventually quit your job permanently. Chapter 14 goes over mini retirements, which can be from 1 month to 6 months. And he goes over ways to save your money. For example, purchase many months in advance, 3 months or more, or purchase them last minute. Aim for a departure and a return between Tuesday and Thursday. You can buy a ticket to an international airport, and then once you get to that international airport, you can buy another ticket from a local airline, which will be much cheaper to go to your next location. So Tim paid $250 for 5 nights on a private island with 3 local fishermen catching and cooking food for him. And they took him to the best spots in Panama. He also goes on to tell us how we should pack for these mini vacations. Chapter 15 goes into the doubts and the thoughts about the new life adjusting to moving remote or quitting your job. He states 2 points that we can use to enjoy life more. One is to continue learning, maybe sports or language, and sharing it with others. And then number 2 is the service of others, impact other people's lives. Finally, chapter 16 goes over 13 new rich mistakes. I'll go over a few. One of them is to lose sight of work and working just for the sake of work, losing sight of your dreams, handling problems you can outsource or have your coworkers do. The next one is helping your coworkers with the same non-crisis problem over and over again, chasing unqualified customers when you have a good cash flow, working where you should sleep or relax, and not doing an 80-20 analysis every 2 to 4 weeks for your life and for your business, viewing one project, job, or thing as the be-it and all and placing it on a pedestal, being obsessed about it, and ignoring the social rewards of life. So that sums it up, and I hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked the summary, if you thought it was useful, leave a like and be sure to subscribe because I post weekly videos and self-help content. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.